What's up, my friend? Abby here, and welcome back to Writer's Life Wednesdays, where we come together to help you make your story matter and make your author dreams come true. NaNoWriMo is just around the corner, and all month long we have been simplifying Preptober as we get ready to embark on our new writing projects. On the first week of October, we talked about the inception of a new story idea, and I shared my simplest outlining method, how to take your messy, rough ideas and turn them into a short and sharp outline for a full-length novel. On week 2, we talked all about characters, which are the most important element of storytelling. And in that video, I shared my new and improved character profile, which will just help you to take your characters to the next level, make them super conflicted and realistic. So if you haven't been following along from the very beginning, I highly recommend checking out those 2 videos. The theme this Preptober has been simplify, and that's been my focus with all of these videos so far, keeping the process super simple and customizable so that you can spend less time overthinking and more time writing with confidence. In this video, we are going to take the process one step further by diving into a chapter by chapter outline. This has recently become my favorite way to expand my short outline while still keeping everything super succinct and organized. So without further ado, grab a notebook and let's get started. Why does your story matter? Good question. What if I told you that there's a science behind every great story? I don't just teach you how to write. I teach you how to change the world with your story and make your author dreams come true. My favorite way to organize my notes and my outlines and my character profiles is, of course, Scrivener. If you know me at all, you know that I cannot shut up about Scrivener. I love this software so much, I could not live without it as a writer. And this is not a paid promotion, this is my honest opinion. I love Scrivener so much, and I think you will too. And if you have yet to bite the bullet and actually buy Scrivener for yourself, I'm glad you waited this long, because you can use the link in the description of this video and use the code ABBY at the checkout to get a 20% discount off your purchase. You're welcome. And if you're thinking right now, Abby, I don't know how to use Scrivener. I only have like 2 weeks left to prepare before NaNoWriMo begins. This is gonna be a huge learning curve. I can't do this. Fear not, because this weekend, I'm going to be doing a special live training specifically on this topic: how to get started fast with Scrivener. In this live training, I'm going to show you how to learn the ropes of Scrivener quickly and efficiently. I'll share my go-to setup for staying organized and keeping everything you need at your fingertips. I'll also be showing you how to use some of my favorite writing and organizational tools so that you can get the most out of your writing experience. This live training is happening Sunday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't make it to the live stream, don't worry, you will be able to watch the replay as many times as you want. So click the link below this video to save your spot at the live training. I hope to see you there. It's gonna be awesome. All right, so let's get into the next step of the plotting process, my chapter by chapter outline. Once I have my rough sketch, my bullet point outline, and my character profiles, I move on to the third step of plotting, which is breaking everything down chapter by chapter to see what happens when. Usually this involves a super long outline, or at least an outline that ends up being super long, which I mentioned back in this rough sketch video. Usually my long outlines end up being like 20,000 words, but I don't necessarily need to have all that detail when I first set out to write the first draft. In fact, sometimes all I need is like a bullet point list of what's going to happen in that chapter. But regardless of whether I have a lot of details or just a few bullet points, I always plan out my chapters using virtual index cards in my Scrivener. So let's dive into the computer now, and I'm gonna show you what this process looks like. All right, so here I am inside of a new Scrivener project. And for this example, I'm going to continue using my Christmas book, Tessa and Weston, The Best Christmas Ever, which was my sequel to 100 Days of Sunlight. And if you remember the first Preptober video, I was using that as an example. So we're gonna go ahead and use that as an example here as well, just so that we can continue down this path of what my plotting process looks like. So in that first outlining video, you probably remember that I shared with you my first initial rough sketch of the story. And I shared how I take my rough, messy ideas and turn them into a coherent, short and sharp outline. So I have here my brain dump, and this is, of course, this is a longer document than I shared in the first video because I have a ton more notes. And as you can see in my brain dumps, a lot of times I write dialogue as well that will end up going in the actual manuscript. So if you've read Tessa and Weston, The Best Christmas Ever, you're probably recognizing some of this dialogue right now. But I'll write like messy notes to myself of just random ideas that I have. So as you can see, it's very disorganized, and a lot of times it's not super coherent, and that's okay because I have not reached the step of this process where I make all of this coherent. That's what we're gonna do right now. You also probably remember that I wrote from this messy brain dump, I created a bullet point outline using the 3-act story structure. So over here in my outlines folder, I have a 3-act story structure folder, and here is my bullet point outline. This is the one that I shared in that first Preptober video. And actually, while I was preparing to write this book, when I was outlining this book, I didn't write much of a extended 3-act story structure outline. I did fill out some of the story beats with some of the plot points that I knew I wanted to happen, but I didn't do all of them. So as you can see in Act 2, I have just the placeholder text from my 3-act story structure template. But I have a subheading here that kind of tells me what's going to happen in this part of the book. So I didn't have a ton to go off of, but what I did was I took that bullet point outline, this one here, and I merged that with my brain dump of all these ideas, and I came up with a long outline, which I ended up adding to as I went, and it ended up being around 15,000 words in the end, which I know is super long, but that's what I use to sketch out my chapter by chapter outline. However, in this example, I'm going to show you right now how I would take my rough sketch and my 3-act story structure bullet point outline and kind of merge those two things together. So all my messy ideas plus the structure to create a chapter by chapter outline using the feature in Scrivener, which allows me to see my corkboard with my index cards. So this is the corkboard view in Scrivener, and if you're totally unfamiliar with Scrivener and you're already feeling disoriented, don't worry. That's the whole purpose of this live training I'm doing later in the week. I'm really excited to invite you guys to that. So if you are unfamiliar with Scrivener, definitely save your spot for that because you'll love it. But right now what I want to do is I want to show you what I do to create this chapter by chapter outline. So as you can see in my manuscript folder, I have one document, chapter 1, and it's blank. Now, obviously, I've already written this book and published it, but for the purposes of our example, I'm just going to fill out some blank placeholder documents here that will represent the chapters of the book. So let's start with 4 chapters. So this is my corkboard view, and to switch over to corkboard view, all you do is click the top folder name. In this case, it's manuscript, and then up here in the top navigation bar, you'll see 3 different views. One is your scrivenings, which is all of your documents, like one after the other. One is the corkboard view, and one is the outline view. So this is the corkboard view that you want to be on in order to see these index cards. So how do we write on these index cards? So going over to, you can actually just double click right here and start writing some text right here. So chapter 1, of course, is the hook. And I want to reference my mini 3-act story structure while I do this. So I'm going to jump back over to that. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to copy this. And one thing I love about Scrivener is how there's always a place to write notes to yourself. You're never at a loss for like, where do I stick this note? So right now I'm going to go up to the top right corner and open the inspector panel. So I'm just going to paste my notes right there so that I can see them, and I can even copy this or highlight this text and make the font a bit larger so that I can see it better. Okay, so I wrote for my hook, cozy Christmas vibes, cute West Test things, etc. I'm obviously going to expand upon that because I want to show my reader more of what has been happening in these characters' lives since the previous book. This is going to be the opening scene. So it's the opening chapter. Tessa is waking up to the first snow. Cozy Christmas vibes, I can still keep that. Cute West Test things, specifically a snowball fight. So that's in chapter 1. I knew that in my brain dump I wanted to have a snowball fight. So right away I'm finding a place for that. Cute West Test snowball fight, and at breakfast, Weston invites Tessa to go sledding with him and his brothers. That's kind of all that happens in chapter 1, but I want to hint at the conflict of the inciting incident, which is the next plot point, of course. And also, another thing that I want to do here is add the point of view. So chapter 1, I know I'm going to start from Tessa's point of view. Chapter 2 is going to alternate to Weston's point of view. So I'm just going to type Weston there, and then we'll go back to Tessa, and then go back to Weston. So I know that I want to dedicate the first 2 chapters to the opening, setting up the conflict. So I want to set up conflict from Weston's point of view as well. But after this breakfast scene, it's going to kind of skip over to the sledding escapade. So we're going to have the sledding escapade from Weston's point of view, just more cute winter vibes. Then they go back to Weston's house and cuddle and look at photo albums together. Tessa promises that this will be the best Christmas ever. So here I'm setting up some conflict for their relationship, which will happen later on. It will unfold later on. But this is kind of the setup. And these 2 chapters are pretty short, pretty to the point, but definitely sets the tone so that we can see the contrast when the inciting incident shows up and kind of turns Tessa's plans upside down. Okay, so I do not like to wait much longer than chapter 3 for the inciting incident. That's just kind of a general rule of mine. So that's where the inciting incident shows up for this story. So right away in chapter 3, I'm just gonna paste my story beat from my rough outline here. The inciting incident happens here. Mom shows up, Tessa's mom shows up to stay for 2 weeks, enter awkward tension between Tessa and her mom. But I don't want the awkward first meeting between Mom and Weston in this chapter because I want that from Weston's point of view. So right away, I know I'm just gonna put that there. This is going to happen in chapter 4. And this awkward first meeting is going to lead to some tension between Tessa and Weston. This is where Weston's fear comes back and sets up the conflict for the rest of the book from his point of view. Anyway, that's like kind of the beginning of his internal journey for this book. Okay, so our next plot point is the first plot point. So that's the logical next step of what comes after these story beats. So let's go ahead and make 2 more cards, and I can do that just by clicking the little plus sign down here at the bottom to create a new document. And as you can see, those 2 new documents just showed up in my manuscript folder. So I'm gonna go ahead and name them Chapter 5, Tessa, and Chapter 6, Weston. Okay, so these 2 chapters are going to be respectively the first plot points or impossible choices for both of these characters. So this is going to be Tessa's first plot point when she has to deal with some conflict about how she's bitter about the past, and so she plans to avoid Mom a lot because she wants to have a good Christmas with Weston. And a lot of this conflict is sparked from the previous chapter. So that awkward first meeting between Weston and Tessa's mom is sort of what sparks this new bitterness in Tessa and makes her really determined to avoid her mom a lot during her stay. I might add something here like in wake of the previous chapter, Tessa is even more bitter about her mom and finds that she can't let go of the past. So she plans to avoid mom a lot, and she just wants to have a good Christmas with Weston. Now, of course, I would add more detail to this when I'm going to actually go and write the chapter. This is really all I need to start the process of brainstorming these chapters in more detail, and even start the process of writing these chapters, writing the first draft. So then we have chapter 6 from Weston's point of view. This has to be sort of the same plot point, first plot point from Weston's point of view. So in this chapter, Weston has a pep talk with Rudy, then he later talks to Tessa about the mom issue, and ultimately he's determined to be the best boyfriend ever and make this the best Christmas for Tessa, because this is sort of starting to go into his conflict about how he feels afraid of losing Tessa, and of course doesn't tell her that, but that's kind of his secret conflict. And so that's the trigger for his decision and his first plot point. So right there, boom, we pretty much have Act 1, and now we can go deeper into this story. So the next plot point is the pre-midpoint reactionary hero. And this is kind of vague because a lot of stuff happens during this portion of the book, but we're slowly building conflict and we're slowly advancing the subplots. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a few more cards. Okay, so chapter 7, we are starting to embark on this pre-midpoint reactionary hero portion of the book. All I have for that is Tessa does a lot of Christmas stuff with Weston's family. It's cute, but she's really avoiding unresolved conflict with her mom. So I would then, at this point, kind of go back to my brain dump document and say, okay, cute Christmas stuff, what was some of the stuff I wanted to have happen? Obviously I have notes about Christmas Eve, that's not happening yet. So logically I kind of look for what is going to be the next thing that I can take from my ideas and insert into this story. So I have this one about the photo album that already happened, but then I come across this note about them getting their Christmas tree. And so this is obviously a little more detailed, and yes, it's sloppy and I'm mostly fangirling to myself, but I will copy this, something like this, and go back to my manuscript, to my notes here in the outline, and replace this section. Yes, it's messy, but I have some clear ideas about what it's going to be. A lot of times I would just lead into my notes by saying something like, getting the Christmas tree, so that I know from a glance what is this chapter about. But I also don't want it to just be cute and fluffy. I want it to have meaning in it. So I would obviously go into this card and start adding, So I would go into this card and start adding some other notes about how we're bringing the conflict into it. So after they go back home and decorate the tree, Tessa talks to Weston's mom and thinks about how she will never have a good relationship with her mom the way Weston does with his mom. So that's something that I just added really quickly, and I know happens in this chapter towards the end, which just ties in more of Tessa's personal internal conflict into what is happening. So it makes all of the external events seem significant in a way because it's tying into the internal conflict. This is essentially my process. I go through my short outline, I go through my bullet point structure, and then I go through my brain dump and I kind of start to weave all those things together. And again, going forward, I can take these plot points one by one and kind of drop them into new scene cards, even if I don't know what chapters these plot points are going to appear in. I can still put them in these index cards, and that way I can break them down into smaller scenes or chapters when I'm ready to do that. So that's another way to do it, is to put each of your plot points into a new index card and then figure out how many scenes or how many chapters it's going to take to accomplish each plot point. So there are multiple ways to do this, and that's what I love about Scrivener is I love how visual it is. I love how you can take your different notes and different outlines and sort of blend them all together into this really coherent, organized way so that you have all your notes at your fingertips exactly where you want them. Okay. Boom, that's it. That's how I break my story down, my outline down chapter by chapter and understand where everything goes, when everything happens, so that it is organized and efficient at my fingertips when I go to write the first draft. Again, this only scratches the surface of Scrivener's capabilities, and I'm so excited to show you the rest of what this software can do. So if you want to hit the ground running and make the most of your writing experience this NaNoWriMo, save your spot at my next live training. Again, the live training is happening Sunday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to show you how to start from scratch and organize your story so that you can write with ease and confidence. And again, if you can't make it to the live training, don't worry, you will still have access to watch the replay as many times as you want. Also, don't forget about the coupon code for Scrivener. So click the link below this video if you haven't bought Scrivener already and use the code ABBY at the checkout to get 20% off. Smash that like button if you liked this video, and be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I post writing videos every single Wednesday and weekend, and I would love to have you here in the community. Until next week, my friend, rock on. And it also helps, like you're saying, to not have to do so many tags, because a lot of times if you have a character with a really distinct voice, and we've established their voice, we can almost tell when they're talking, because we know them at this point, you know, we know what their character is like.